Good morning and welcome to Charlie's Corner. Today we are going to pick up our story at Lord William Alexander's grandchildren. They migrated from Scotland over to Virginia, and he had 9 grandchildren that actually made the journey, that migrated to America, and one of them was named Anthony Alexander. And this is all taking place the late 1600s and the early 1700s, and what an exciting time to be alive. So much was going on there, and I bet you're not even aware of what was going on at that time. Let's get into it. We'll grab your cup of coffee, have a seat. I'm going to load up my pipe, and let's get started. So, Anthony Alexander was born sometime around 1661 over in Scotland, and the next records that I've found on him show up at 1681 when he married his wife Sarah Ann in the province of Carolina. So he would have come over from Scotland sometime between 1661 and 1681. Would have come over with some other brothers and sisters. There were 9 of them. And they would have come into the Chesapeake Bay area of Virginia. And from there, Anthony went down to what's now Tyrrell County, North Carolina. Anthony had 14 kids altogether. All right. Sarah Ann, she died about 1720, and then he married again and had 5 more kids with her, but a total of 14 kids. He initially settled 200 acres, and I'll show you exactly where that was. But over his lifetime, by the time he died, he had about 2,700 acres. He got 6 more land grants over his lifetime and expanded throughout Tyrrell County during his life. Oh, let me show you where that original 200 acres is. Now, this is the Albemarle Sound, and you got Edenton right here. Here's your Outer Banks over here. All right, here's the Alligator River, and right in here is the Scuppernong River. All right, so if we zoom in, whoops, let's zoom in, not out. Here's that Scuppernong River. Alligator River's over here. All right. And right in here, I'll show you. Oops, here it is. Now, here's something really cool. See this road right here? Now, at the time when he settled, this was an Indian trail, all right? And the Indian trail went from, let me show you. Fort Landing over here, and it came up, went up around here, came around, came down, and there was an Indian village right here. Mapplepen or something like that. It was right here. All right. And on that bend is where he put his first plantation, Soundside Plantation. All right. You can see a little harbor right here, and see this big field right here, and this road. Okay. Now this would have been the original road coming off of this trail, the original coming to where the house was. So where's the house? Well, I'm actually going to show you where the house was. All right. His 200 acres, he would have cleared all this land. It looked like this beforehand. And he would have cleared all this. And that's where the original house was. And that's a graveyard. That's the Alexander graveyard right there. There are many Alexander graves right there from our family. Let's see if I go in a little bit further and see what she gives you. So you can actually see some of the little graves in there. That's an Alexander graveyard. That's where the house was. It's not there anymore. And then there was a barn. There used to be a barn over here. And you can see the channels, the ditches cut in here. He would have cut these ditches to drain this because this is all swampland. Let's go back out again. And then he would have had to take all the produce, all this land here would have been his, what he cleared and made. And then he would have owned all this land here as well, but this is all swamp. There's nothing in here. There's no way to farm this land. It's all swamp. And then he would have had, his goods would have went out of right here on this harbor right here, because everything back then was by water. Let's move back out again. Oh, let me show you something. Look at this. Alexander Street, right there. There's an Alexander Street. So if you're looking for this area, you can go to maps and say Alexander Street, Tyrrell County, North Carolina, and it will take you right here. All right, now let's go back out. Tyrrell County is mostly swamp. You can see that with this aerial photograph, okay? It's mostly all swamp, all right? And nowadays, who owns most of this land is Weyerhaeuser and the federal government. There's a preserve right here. This was all Alexander land. He had a plantation up in this area. He had a plantation over here in Newfoundland area, and he had a plantation down here on the south shore of the Little Alligator River, right here. And so he owned like most of all of this, which is Tyrrell County today. And you can see how many roads there are. See the roads? And then there's little tiny ones. If you zoom in, there's going to be tiny two-way roads that go in here. But there was nothing back then. Everything was by water. So he's over here, and he has to get his goods out. He has to take it by water to across to Edenton, down over here. So he's here, and he had to take it down through this Albemarle Sound. Oops, sorry, went too far. Down through the Albemarle Sound, up around here, to Edenton. All right, and that's where he would get rid, sell his corn, extra corn, tobacco. That's basically what they grew back then. But even now, you can see there are almost no roads in there. And let me, how do I go back to that other layer? There it is. You see, there's this road here, which is very recent. This road here, this is all swamp in here. Even today, there are a few little farms in there, and that's it. So Anthony and his wife, Sarah Ann, they arrive at Fort Landing, and then they have to go on that Indian trail. They go about 10 miles, and then they claim that land there as high ground because everything in between is basically swamp, and it's not farmable. And a lot of the farms that are there now, they had to dig deep canals and drain off the swamp in order to farm the land. But back then, they didn't do that. They just cleared the higher ground and people say, well, they settled, you know, in like 1685, 1690. Think about that, all right? In that area of North Carolina where they settled, there is nothing there, all right? It's swamps and woods, thick North Carolina woods. There's bears on the land and alligators in the water and hostile Indians all around them. And they're cutting out a living in that. Some very tough people. Of course, by the time he died, he had 14 kids to help him clear the land, so that kind of helps. And he had like 4 or 5 slaves, too. Anthony did own slaves. He owned like 4 or 5. But the amount of land that they cleared to farm is just incredible. All by hand, like axes and freaking horses to pull the logs, and then they float them down to the water, and then take them to a sawmill, which is actually at Kindish Creek, which is right here where I'm at Kindish Creek. There was a sawmill at that time, so a small one. And very few people. Let's go over the population of Tyrrell County, and it'll give you an idea. See, Tyrrell County at that time also included Dare County, Tyrrell County, Hyde County, and Washington County were all one county, all right? Now, today, Tyrrell County has 4,280 people in it, the whole county. That's the whole population, 4,200 in the whole county, all right? Back in 1740, Tyrrell County had a population of 2,500 people. Now, we're talking about an area of about 2,860 square miles. In 2,800 square miles, you've got 2,500 people. It was roughly 1 person per square mile in this area. That's in about 1740. Okay, this is 60 years after Anthony got here. There was still only 1 person per square mile. And you think about marriage. All right, 1 person per square mile, then half of those are going to be, only half of those are going to be female, maybe probably even less, or female. Then you got to go, okay, take out the married ones from the female population. Then you take out the ones that aren't marrying age out of that female population. And it was pretty slim pickings, which is why we don't have as many branches as we should have in our family. There was, Anthony had grandchildren who were cousins that got married. They were first cousins and they got married. And that was basically because there's nobody else there. Even today, funny story. Let me tell you this story. Okay. It was about 1999. I was married, my second wife, and we had kids, and we were in Oregon, and it sucks in Oregon. And so I wanted to move us back out to North Carolina. And I did. I moved us all out to North Carolina. She hated it here. We fought like cats and dogs. It was over this because I loved it here. I love it here. She didn't like it here. And she says to me one time, she goes, well, if you love it here so much, why didn't you marry someone from here? And I told her, I couldn't marry anyone from here because I'm related to everybody. And I am literally related to everybody. If your family has been on the Albemarle Sound more than 2 generations, we have a common ancestor, okay? It's crazy. I framed houses one time. There was 5 people counting me, on the crew, they were giving me the razz because I don't have the North Carolina accent, right? Because I grew up on the West Coast. And I told them, you know what? First of all, I was born here. Second of all, my family's been here longer than any of you, okay? And I tell you that furthermore, I'm probably related to every one of you. And they're all, one of the guys says, well, I'm from Philadelphia. And I go, okay, well, I'm not related to you, but I'm related to the rest of you. And sure enough, we started talking, and within 2 or 3 generations, there was a common ancestor. All right. And so I'm literally related to anyone on this Albemarle Sound, one way or another, if their family's been here more than a couple generations. So Anthony built himself a cabin and clears off 200 acres, and it was about 1702 he gets his land grant. All right, because you have to clear the land in order to get the grant. He cleared the land by 1702. He got the grant. Got his first 200 acres. And so then, what's going on at this time? There's so much going on at this time. 1711 to 1715, there was the Tuscarora War. And I'll go into that. 1716 to 1718, somewhere around there. Blackbeard, Edward Teach, Blackbeard the pirate, he was here. I'll go into that story. And it's incredible, everything that went on here during that time. There was a mad rush during the 1680s. And that's when most of the families came into this area. There was a mad rush, and they migrated in and picked up land. And my family was one of 12 families that settled Tyrrell County. I think we're going to break here before I go into the Tuscarora Wars and Blackbeard. Is this going to get pretty long? You know, an interesting thing, patterns. I talk about there's no chaos, there's always patterns, and I have something in common with Anthony Alexander. He was born in 1661, which would have made him about 20 years old when he went to sea. And I was born in 1961, and I would have been 20 years later when I went to sea for the first time. It's kind of interesting. And threes. I've been married 3 times. I have 3 biological children. And guess how many years between the birth of Anthony Alexander, who was the first generation of Alexander to settle North Carolina, and then my birth, which is the last generation to settle, because my kids all live over in Oregon and they're never going to live here. So I'm the last generation of Alexander to live here on the Albemarle Sound. There is exactly 300 years between the two of us. Kind of interesting. I'll see you next time on Charlie's Corner, and we'll pick up the story with the Tuscarora Wars and Blackbeard.